from Upstate Supernatural. I'd like to welcome everybody in for a brand new episode of Our Paranormal Stories. And this week we have a special guest with us. This is Keith Liinder from Washington State. Keith has been going through a lot of different experiences within the property that he was living in within the past. Well, we'll get into that during the rest of the interview, because that'll be one of the questions we're going to ask. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and welcome in Keith. And Keith, you're on, buddy.
Hello, Don. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
And how long did you reside in the residence?
The house that I want to, I guess, tell my story about, we were there 4 years. I moved there May 1st of 2012. And it's kind of weird because I moved out May 8th of 2016. So I've been out of the house over a year, but definitely lived there for 4 years. Me and my girlfriend did.
And I mean, it's been a huge. There's been a bunch of information about it. It's been on Ghost Adventures. It's been investigated by teams in England, teams within the United States. What are some of the things that were occurring there, just to start, and then we can get into the other interesting aspects of what's been happening with it.
Yeah. So. Interesting. When we moved in May, summer of 2012, some of the things we started noticing early on, but wasn't quite ruling as being paranormal, was waking up in the morning, going to work, and seeing all the kitchen cupboards open. Little subtle things that happened when we first moved in. By moving first moved in, I would say probably like 6 weeks of living in the home. So imagine you're waking up, you're leaving to go out the door, and you see all your kitchen cabinet doors open. Every door downstairs is wide open. Nothing's out of place, nothing's knocked over yet, but it's kind of weird. And then soon after that, items began to turn up missing. My car keys, some of my girlfriend's jewelry, silverware like forks and knives, stuff that you don't really miss on day one, but over time you start asking yourself these weird questions as, hey, I could have sworn we had more silverware than this. I could have sworn we had more forks. And it's just me and my girlfriend in the house. We don't have any kids. There's no roommates. But we're in a new house, and obviously we just sort of... it was weird, but we didn't quite or could not put our finger on it until the day a plant rose up off the den floor while we were watching TV together, me and my girlfriend. And this plant sits by the entertainment center. It's about 4 feet tall, but it rises a few inches off the ground and does a 360-degree spin, and then keels over and falls over. At that time, we combined what we just seen with our own eyes and what we had just seen the last few weeks, and said we may have a ghost on our hands. And when we say the word ghost, me and my girlfriend sort of laughing off, thinking, at best, this is going to be a friendly ghost, because we don't really know the different degrees of ghosts. Friendly, not friendly, evil, whatever. But okay, if that's the worst it's going to be, of items missing and a few things moving here and there, that might be kind of okay or cool, if you will, if that's as far as it goes. And of course, that's definitely not as far as it went, because weeks and months, the activity began to spike. Larger objects got thrown, the loud banging. These banging noises just came out of nowhere. You could be sitting on the couch or in your office watching TV, and all of a sudden, out the blue, these just bangs, and you can never really pinpoint the direction that these bangs are coming from. But we thought that was kind of troublesome, so we did a little bit of research, me and my girlfriend, as to maybe how to appease or quiet the spirits, because keep in mind, we're far believing we think we have a poltergeist on our hands. We're not even close. But the information we're getting online is, well, have your house blessed, have it cleansed, have it saged, and then just try to be positive. That seemed to make the activity worse by the response of the sage, because fast forward to 2014, now we got fires, now we got Bibles catching fire. And by when I say these Bibles, because this is one of the most, or was one of the controversial aspects of this case, was, oh, you have this girlfriend and boyfriend living together and they're burning Bibles. But keep in mind, the Bibles that caught fire in my home in 2014 caught fire because we were told to display or show our religious objects. Meaning, if you got a Bible, you want to open it up to your favorite chapter, your favorite proverb or psalms or whatever, or verse, and you want to keep it in a focal point of the house. Find a place in the house and make it your focal point. So we did. So we kept the Bible in our hallway. We kept candles around it, and we just kept it open. Well, you go to sleep, you wake up, the Bible's missing. A few days later, it returns and it's in ashes. Or one Bible we had went missing for a year and a half. Was taken in 2012 and came back in 2014. And the fire alarm. We opened up our bedroom door, and there was the missing Bible, and it was on fire. So now we're really thinking, okay, it's sort of demonstrating to us that it doesn't want to play well, doesn't want to work well, might not even like us. So that's when we started looking to try to get either the church involved, and we spoke to a lot of churches in Bothell. We spoke to a lot of churches in the Seattle metro area, in Oregon, in Idaho, and we really tried to get some hands on deck as to who could help us. And a few did. A few priests responded, a few clergy responded, a few paranormal teams responded, but it just seemed to get worse and worse and worse. And like you had mentioned earlier, I mean, the activity, probably if you just take the 4 years that we lived there and was just to condense the activity along within those 4 years, you're probably looking at 2, maybe 2.5 years of just all activity. And I've seen stuff that I never in my wildest dreams would have imagined that I would see, nor my girlfriend, because we were moving into our first house together. We had been together for 2 years prior, me and my girlfriend. So this was a kind of a step in the right direction for us relationship-wise of, hey, let's put it under one roof. Let's move into a house and make it work and see how it works. The farthest thing on our mind is malevolent activity. I mean, that was not in the cards or our thinking. I don't think it would be anybody's cards or thinking, but yeah, you're sort of left with, do you stay and fight? Do you fight for your house, or do you run and let the house go? Because we had those conversations a lot as to, do we just pick up and cut our losses? But the thing that stood in my mind and her mind at the time that sort of made us sort of stand our ground, if you will, was we got in touch with the previous tenants. And it took a year and a half to find some of them, but when we did, one of them told us that they had similar activity, and they were experiencing some of the things that we were experiencing, and they just upped and moved, and they didn't tell the landlord, they didn't tell the homeowner. They just packed their bags and said, somebody else could deal with this. But for me, it just did not sit well to just up and leave, especially when we start having the fires, and especially when the previous tenants told me they had children. We didn't have children, but when the previous tenants told me that some of the things that they went through and some of the things that the children went through, I just did not want to leave the house in the same condition that I found it, if help was out there. I mean, by help, I mean a paranormal team that can come in and substantiate, as well as try to determine or locate the root cause. The house is only 10 years old, so this is a young house sitting in a young neighborhood. So when it caught the wind of Nikki Novell and Carissa Fleck and others, it became their interest and my interest to try to determine, number one, if you want to substantiate your claims, because you have a lot of claims out there, and also we need to determine what's the root cause. Is it the land? You both of you guys said y'all didn't play with an Ouija board, so there's a lot of different avenues we have to exhaust in trying to find why this house, out of 300 houses in your neighborhood, what makes this house unique. And we got some of those answers. I mean, it was a long slog to get there, 4 years, matter of fact, and we still have a lot of questions still, but we're way better off than we were last year, the year before, and the year before.
And you've even, like, it was shown on Ghost Adventures, and it was known as the Demons in Seattle case. Now, out of curiosity, did they name that, or was it just kind of like just what it was classified at that time? Because I know the classification has changed within the last few years.
Yeah, and that sort of played into the controversy, and that's a good question, because me and Tina never. I mean, it's Ghost Adventures, it's Travel Channel. We had no say in the name of the show. Mm-hmm. When Dave Trader interviewed me, I never even mentioned the word demon to him. I knew at that time what I thought was haunting us, but I just told him we had a house and crazy stuff was happening. Now, Ghost Adventures came, I believe it was November of 2014. The episode aired February of 2015. So I think for obvious reasons they chose the name Demons in Seattle as a campaign as to, viewership, watching, and all that stuff. And keep in mind, we at that time had 3 burnt Bibles, a couple of crosses that caught fire, a lot of wall markings of the 666 and the upside down crosses. None that me and Tina are not responsible for those events. Whatever that was in the home that was doing it is, but I think that coincided or worked well with their campaign of saying, let's just name the episode Demons in Seattle. Be it as it may. I mean, the word demon is thrown around a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Both Hollywood and in the paranormal community. But no, we had no say when we, and a lot of people don't know this, but when we saw the episode February 28th, or when the episode aired, that was our first time knowing what the show was going to be named. That was the first time we knew the outcome of their investigation.
Yeah, that's not even that you should know that before that's being put out there. You know what I mean? No. I mean, we had one-way correspondence before they came to my house. The correspondence was two-way. When they left, it went back to one-way because I was sending them emails, as well as the homeowner. Keep in mind, the homeowner who sanctioned Ghost Adventures' arrival and investigating his home was eagerly curious as we were, but there was dead air. And then when the show episode aired, we're more eager because we haven't been told anything for the last 2.5 months. So when we watch it, first thing we see is, oh, Demons in Seattle. Okay, that's really setting yourself up, for a lot. Whatever they found, I guess. And I know, because I know Nikki and I know Carissa and numerous individuals, it became kind of a mission for them, to help you most of all, but also to disprove some of the shenanigans that happen with that, because they to put it lightly, I guess it's not lightly, but they really kind of slam the situation. And I've seen great findings from Nikki and Carissa on the residence and on the property. The Bible pages turning, the apparition that was captured on the I believe it was a surveillance camera, and I remember personally myself helping review a bunch of the surveillance footage for all you guys as well. So I mean, it puts that reality out there, for people to really see what actually is happening and what's, what other people kind of perceive it as.
Yeah, and there was a perception, and how Nikki and them, I mean, they found me because, keep in mind, after the episode aired, we caught a lot of, the social blogosphere lit up. Tina, in a metaphoric sense, on the chin a great deal, based on the episode, and your listeners can make that judgment call, but the consensus is it seemed a heavy-handedness was done against Keith and Tina, the house occupants of all people. But anyways, to me, a month or so after the episode, they found me via my YouTube channel, and they approached me and they were very sincere and said, "Hey, we're an investigative team. We got a little bit of curiosity here. The show left a lot of fill in the blanks. It just didn't make sense. And if you would let us, we would just like to keep it simple and monitor your home and document what we see via our cameras." And I was like very reluctant at first because Ghost Adventures left a bad taste in my mouth, and I was trying to put that chapter behind me, and I was definitely trying not to get the spirits any negative or attention, because at that time the house was quiet.
And it was privatized, I believe, if I remember right. Like, it was very private. It wasn't made public.
Yeah, they wanted to keep it on the down low, keep it on the hush hush. I think we agreed to a 90-day or 120-day observation. They even monitored the house while I was away on business. And they said, and like most paranormal, or I guess true paranormals will say, we'll let the evidence, if there is any, dictate where we should go next. And that's what they did. And like you said, when they started picking up apparitions on the door, and they started picking up voices and noise and banging, and they were reviewing these with their peers, you being one of them was on some of those reviews, and y'all would confirm, debunk others. And then that's when the question was like, okay, there's enough there. We've seen stuff with our own eyes. We know where Keith's at. Keith is in Florida or Chicago, wherever, on business. The house is completely empty. There's a camera in every room. And we're seeing apparitions, and we're seeing noises and movement and chair movement. Now it became time to put boots on the ground. And this is, like I said, towards the end of 2015, when the determination was, let's go live in the home. Because keep in mind, and I didn't know this then, but I know it now because I've been doing a lot of research now. An experience like this either forces you to do two things: either try to block it off and shut it down for the rest of your life and never look over your shoulder again, or you gain a sense of curiosity in going to study and research to try to make sense of what you experience. So I chose the latter, and the more I read, the more I understood that when you go after malevolent hauntings, poltergeist being one of those types of hauntings, the best thing you can do is keep the atmosphere or the environment as the same as possible without interjecting or changing a lot in it, because you don't know what the root cause is. And if you go in there and you say, well, you and Keith go stay in a hotel talking about Ghost Adventures in their lockdown, and we're going to do our own investigation, well, you're disturbing the dynamics of the home. And if you're there only for a few hours, then you're definitely limiting yourself as to capturing anything. So it was Nikki and others' idea that if we do come, well, number one, we're not going to ask you to stay in a hotel while we're there. That'd be just stupid. But number two, we're going to stay there for a long time. And by long time, I meaning 3 weeks. So Carissa stayed 3.5 weeks. Nikki stayed 1 week. And they lived in a home, and they had each in an individual room. and you just go about your normal day. You don't really have to go around with a voice recorder in your hand looking for the evidence, because now you're in the environment. The environment's going to approach you, and that's what it did with Carissa, and that's what it did with Nikki. Because I'm at work, I do my 8 to 5 in their home, and they're hearing the footsteps, the pitter patter, the running, door closure sounds, electronic issues and whatnot. And then they are using some of their equipment to, entice the spirits, if you will. And some of those you've seen, and some of those the community has seen. And once again, like I said, the campaign was substantiate, but also it was to go after, what could be the root cause of some of these things, and why are some of these things happening. And the more we dug about the land, the history of the city, the history of the town, the history of the neighborhood, slowly but surely we started getting a few questions, or a few answers to the questions. And then my involvement, or should I say, the UK, United Kingdom, the scientific establishment of parapsychology, which is another organization separate from the US teams. Steve Mara and his chief researcher, Don Phillips, between both guys, they have about 60 years of paranormal investigative background. And they're coming from a different angle than Nikki and Carissa, but everybody's going to reach the same conclusions because they came and stayed 2 weeks. They came to make 2 trips. And they lived in the home, and just like Nikki and Carissa, they felt it would be ill-advised, or it would pretty much sabotage the investigation if you ask the home occupant to leave. So, Keith, do your normal do what you normally do, and we're not observing you, we're just observing the house. And the house is going to speak to him. And it spoke to him because, like I said, the evidence that Nikki and Carissa, you mentioned that the Bible's pages turning by themselves. People can maybe try to debunk a page turning, it's the wind, it's the air vent, it's the draft, it's the air coming out of your mouth because you're talking. There's all kind of ways a person can debunk that. But I ask anybody who tries to debunk that, well, can you debunk the disembodied voice happening while the pages are turning? Because Nikki and Carissa are asking questions while they're looking at the Bible, and if the listener listens, you will hear there's a third voice responding, and you hear the banging and the popping and the snapping in the background of the home as both ladies get deeper into the questions that they ask. Now, the environment is changing. These noises that you hear on that video is a phenomenon known as rapping, and that is a poltergeist related phenomenon. But it seems the more questions they ask, and keep in mind the entity is using whatever it uses to turn pages, so it could be drawing energy from several parts or other parts of the house, because that's what we think those noises were. And at one point during that Q&A, the spirit asked Nikki and Carissa, show me how to, or can you help me turn these pages? And that's all for the listener to listen for and make the judgment call themselves. But it's very interesting, and those ladies captured that just totally ad hoc. I think it was the last night that Nikki was there that they did that session.
Yeah, there was some absolutely astounding findings that they found from what they were doing, and it really is a new method to investigating with staying in the home for that long. Because a lot of times it's usually 4 or 5 hours, 8 hours, and then they find their findings and then they leave. So this is definitely a new method, and it really seemed to work more. And out of curiosity, not to go back to it, but when the Ghost Adventures was there, how long were they even there? Were they only there for a day or 2 days, or?
Well, there's 2 Ghost Adventures, and I'll divide it up. There's the A team and the B team. The B team, which is responsible for reenactments, reshoot, I think they call it the B-roll or whatever.
Okay.
They were home for 3 days, but they're not investigating. They're there to reduplicate the Bible burning, the cross burning, all that stuff you see, those fillers you see in the show. That's all they do. Now, Zach and Dave and his crew arrive, and they're there. Probably they investigated no more than 6 hours. And I mean 6 hours of the vans pull up, the SUVs pull up, the gear pops out of the back. They've got crates to unpack, they've got cameras to install, they've got to test it, they've got to test equipment. It takes about 2 hours to to set up a production in a home like that. So that's 2 hours of just that. Okay. Now let's go do some investigative work and da-da-da-da-da-da. And you saw me and Tina roaming around the house in the dark and all that. That's about an hour. The show maybe show you about 10 minutes of that. Then they send us on our way. So they probably got 3 hours of hardcore investigative work. And then the last 2 hours, because I got the house the next day at 7 a.m., they were gone. So they got 3 hours of hardcore investigative work. And then the next 2 hours after that, they must pack up and be out the home. Okay. So, yeah, 3 hours is a second, in my opinion, to investigate anything close to this, because an entity that has shown itself to be elusive, has shown itself to be somewhat intelligent, is just going to buy its time. And that's okay. I mean, most investigators that I've talked to say you have to expect that when you go into a house like that, because the entity, number one, is under no obligation to bring validity to the house occupant's case. There's just no way of an entity, or there's no reason why an entity would want to bring validity to Zach and the Ghost Adventure, or to me and Tina, in the eyes of Zach and Ghost Adventure. These guys traveled 3,000 miles with a big production. They've called the show Demons in Seattle.
Right.
They're looking for demons. And the ghost, in a way, to say, well, the best way for me to get back at these guys, meaning Keith and Tina, for even having these guys here in the first place, is to just buy my time and not do anything. Now, one thing did happen during that episode that I thought was interesting, and others brought it to my attention that they thought it was interesting, and I was shocked that Ghost Adventures didn't call attention to it, was they experienced a lot of equipment malfunction during the setup and during the investigative part of the home. They had a lot of equipment malfunction. I think some of it they showed on the TV show where the batteries were dying in various parts of the room, one being the office. And that's not evidence by itself, but it is peculiar when you look at the things that I had been telling them before they arrived, where I was saying that some of my own cameras have been thrown, destroyed. We have had battery loss. I think Jennifer, who was on the episode No Bull Paranormal, who told them about the sage stick burning, she told them about all their equipment dying upon door entry of the home. But they made no mention of it, or they called no attention to it. It would just seem very heavy-handedness. But yeah, just going fast forward back to Nikki and the UK's investigation. Yeah, you tend to, or I would think, if you've been in this field long, you have to predict what the entity is not going to do, because the entity does not want you to know that it's there. I mean, it's been terrorizing us for 2 years at that point. What's in it for the entity to bring validity that Keith and Tina are not burning the Bibles? I mean, the entity is not going to say, no, it's me. Yeah, I'm the one burning the crosses on the wall. Yeah, it's me. It's not going to do that. But there's a way for you to still get the evidence the way Nikki and Carissa did. And you're right, it's a new method. It's one that I am living proof to show that it works, is, yeah, living in a home with the house occupants, because teams before Nikki and teams before Steve and Dawn would arrive, and yeah, they would arrive by 3 p.m. and then they'd be gone by 10 p.m. And to me, that's just really, I know some hauntings that might be good, but I really like the method of living in the home for a period of time, especially when you're talking about potential poltergeists, because Poltergeist, to me, I mimic or I compare it to chasing lightning or waiting for lightning to strike. I mean, me and Tina have been sat at our dinner table one night, and we haven't had activity in over a year. And we're just having dinner, making conversation, and out the blue, something huge gets thrown across the wall. No precursor, no warning, no nothing. Just out of the blue. And from then on out, the activity is every day, every day, every day, every day. But there's never a warning most of the time, and there's nobody can make heads or tails as to why that happens. It seems something we're totally oblivious to, because these things lie in wait, but it seems something jumps off, and once it jumps off, it lasts a couple of weeks. In our case, it lasts 2.5 years.
Now, you've since moved out of the property, and you're now in a different location, I'm sure. Have things followed you? Have things still been occurring since you left this property?
Yeah, and one of the reasons, well, one of my biggest fears while living at the Bothell home, and I would probably say it played a small role in me not moving, was the fear of something following me. You know, it's like somebody, you know, diagnoses you with something, and they say, well, this is terminal for you. We've diagnosed you. And then one day you go in for a checkup, and they say, oh, it's gone. And you're like, well, what do you mean it's gone? They're like, well, it's gone, but we don't know why. And you think you've dodged a bullet. So that question mark hangs out there as to, will this ever come back? Will this thing follow me when I move it to a new place? Because if it follows me to a new place, then the question has to be, okay, now how do we get rid of it now? Because now it's attached to me. It wasn't attached to me prior to moving in the home, because none of this happened to me and Tina before we moved into the home. But now it's attached to me. So yeah, when I moved out in May of last year, there was some anxiety. I wasn't surprised to have a phenomena happening at my new place, because and Nikki and Carissa would tell you, because they know about the case, when I would travel on business, living at the old house, I would be in a hotel away from the house, and I've had instances where the sheets have been yanked off me in my hotel bed. I've had the pillows taken from me, from under me while sleeping, the vibrating mattress, the bed shakes, the poking and the prodding. This is in a hotel. This is me 500 miles from my house. This is why I'm living in the Bothell home. And that was 2 years prior to moving. So there's nothing dynamic changing, except wherever I'm moving to now is going to be my new permanent residence. So when I moved May 8th and May 9th of last year, two phenomena is happening within 48 hours of me being in the new home. I woke up one morning going to work, and I got up. I'm in my new home. I got a lot of boxes stacked everywhere, but I sat down on my computer to check my work email, and I'm sitting at my computer desk in my new home, and all of a sudden I hear this tapping, and it's just, first I'm not paying attention to it, because I think whatever tapping noises I'm hearing is going to eventually stop. Well, it's like 5 minutes into me checking my email, I'm hearing this tapping go on and on and on, and then finally my brain resonates and says, where is that tapping coming from? So I turn to my left, and I see water coming from my ceiling, and the tapping is of the drops hitting my table, my kitchen table. So I get up, and I see on my kitchen table there's puddles of water. I look at the ceiling, and I see drops coming from the ceiling. Now, I wasn't thinking paranormal even at that instance, because I have tenants above me. And most of the time, you know, you got water coming from your ceiling, you're going to think broken plumbing, somebody's left the bathtub running upstairs, da-da-da-da-da. So I left my unit, went upstairs and knocked on the door of my upstairs neighbor and say, hey, you guys might have a water leak or something busted. No, none of that is happening in their place. I go back downstairs, the water's still coming. So I call the building maintenance. They come right away because water coming from the ceiling is, is pretty a big deal. They come in and investigate, and they see the water coming, and they bring in their water finder tools, and they can't find the source of the water. Well, about 20 minutes, the water stops dripping. But they still trying because they're building maintenance, so they go back upstairs and talk to the upstairs tenants. And the upstairs tenants let them in, and they comb the area looking for the source of the water. They could find neither. They come back down, use their water finder tools again, and we don't know where that water is coming from. If it should happen again, let us know. They came back 2 days later to try to do a second follow-up because it was still scratching their heads, because I'm a new tenant and all that. Well, this guy's new. He's going to think this place is run down. It's crazy. He's already got water issues. He's only been here 2 days. So they went through a fine-tooth and nail again, bringing an outside plumber. And he couldn't find no water. So, matter of fact, there's no water or plumbing or pipes in the ceiling to begin with. Okay? So there's no way that water could be doing that. And I'm thinking in the back of my mind, because I've had this water instance before at the old house, me and Tina have. And we've had water puddle phenomena before. And so that was interesting and scary. The second thing that that happened to me here within the first week of living in the new home is I was sleeping, and all of a sudden I hear something whisper in my ear that says, Keith. It's a female voice. And I know this female voice because she said Keith at the other house. And some of the video and audio that the UK team captured while they were in the home, they picked up some EVPs of Keith. On my YouTube channel, or a number, there's so many of the Keith EVPs, or what we call EVPs, on my channel of both houses. Of well, sometimes it's a female voice, sometimes it's a male voice, and you hear the voice as clear as day. This is not something that you have to strain your ear to listen for. This person is saying Keith. Now, I did one thing interesting, Dom. The day that I moved out of the old home, the movers came in, is I put voice recorders. I learned something from Nikki and Carissa, and I learned something from Steve and Dawn while here, is I laced the house with voice recorders while the movers were packing my stuff and moving me to my new place. And I had one video camera running, and 2 months after I moved out, I reviewed those audio and video. And these are on my channel as well. And on the video and all the audio, mind you, these audio devices are in different parts of the house. They picked up over, I think we've now counted 47 Keith utterances while the movers were moving my stuff. I'm in the home too, and you can hear these Keiths. They're over and over. And I've heard those Keiths in the new home. I've heard them in the old home. I've heard them in hotels when I travel on business. And we've picked a few up in my new place. So I think that sort of lends itself some sort of attachment, if you will. But as far as the phenomena being violent as it was at the old house, knock on wood, no. The stuff I have now is borderline level 1 activity. If on a scale of 1 to 5, I would have to give it a low 1. It's still discerning because I'm still getting the bed shakes, the poking and the prodding, and the occasional Keith whisper. And that's what me and the parapsychologists are trying to make heads or tails out of, as well as other individuals. So that's where we're at in that regard.
Now, with the findings that the other individuals have found, was there more than one possible entity or individual that was haunting that residence, and perhaps maybe there was, and now only one of them is kind of with you, the one that is the not so malevolent one, compared to the one that was burning Bibles and writing on the walls and so forth? Did they figure out if there was more than one individual that was haunting that location?
Yeah, if we go by the voices alone, we've captured about between 11 to 14 different entities. And I don't know if an entity can have more than one voice. I'm just going by, we've got 14 different distinct voices.
Okay.
So at the old house that we've captured, we got women, several voices of women, a lot of voices of men, a few children. I know Carissa and them got a few children voices. You've seen the gray apparition lady. I've seen her a couple of times at the old house. There was a white apparition lady. So we had a conclave of different spirits. The ones that I would think were doing, I don't know which one, and I probably would never know which one was doing the burnt Bibles and all of that. Now, I think 2 spirits followed me here. And the only reason why I say that is because I've got 2 voices. Now, Steve and Dawn found something very interesting, and it was an interesting experiment that Steve did, how he found this. And it's sort of kind of haunting me to this day because we can't make heads or tails out of it. Steve decided to put some motion cameras in the hallway, and I guess it's what they call those flash beam lights or whatever in the hallway too, and let it just do its thing for about an hour and a half. And we cordoned off the area. Nobody can go upstairs. We're just going to cordon it off and let these devices do what they do. And if they pick up something, fine. If they don't, fine. Within a few minutes, they began picking up heavy motion. I mean, it was, the cameras are almost going off continuously by the motion detected. And we thought
you're talking like the grid lights, like the dot pattern, so forth, right?
No, these are the man. What do they call those things? Man, what is that? It's like those white neon lights. Well, they're not neon, but they're flashing. It always scope or strobe lights, kind of like a strobe light.
Okay, gotcha.
Continuous. But and he had a thought experiment that this would agitate, if not activate, the entities in the home. And he came downstairs, and I don't think he was even at his desk for 2 minutes when my motion cam started detecting motion. But we kind of laughed it off because we thought it was a false positive, because there's no way the motion is going off this continuous. I mean, it's going off like crazy. And so Steve, in an hour and a half, goes back to retrieve his device. He's recorded it. Upon time to review it, we're looking like it's going to be nothing on here, and that's a good thing. We don't want nothing on here. He's picking up these shadows. I mean, he's picking up maybe 45 shadows, and I'm just going to describe what these shadows look like. Once again, this is all on my channel. It's all on my blog, or on the Washington State Poltergeist Facebook page. These shadows of furry beings. I ain't gonna call them animals, but these are furry things. Okay, and they're all over the camera. All right, and another instance that same weekend, Steve sets up tripwire in the hallway, optical tripwire, and they go off, and he goes up to respond to the tripwires going off, and he hears these pitter-patting, these feet like pitter-patting, scurrying through the hallway. And what's funny is, and he talks about it on his analysis, is so, and you know the layout of my hallway. You've seen the layout of my hallway. As soon as you get up the base of the landing, the top of the stair where you're at the landing area, there's one tripwire there. That's the one that's going off. Okay, he gets to that tripwire, it's going off. You know, he hits the button, turns it off, and he hears the scuttering. Okay, there's another tripwire about 4 feet ahead of him that's not going off yet. Well, it soon goes off in the direction of the pitter patter. So something is zooming down the hallway, and as it's fleeing Steve, my L-shaped hallway, you've seen. There's two more tripwire it crosses, and when it crosses them, each one goes off. Now you can't see nothing with the naked eye, but for an investigator, and this is Steve Murray, and this is an investigator's dream to see something so blunt like that, to where you got to come down and tell your colleague Dawn and me and whoever, you got to write it in your notes as that just happened. Mind you, what do you write down if you didn't hear the pitter patter? But now you got pitter patter association, or somebody running in the hallway in association, synchronized with the tripwires going off. So yeah, going back to your original question of, yeah, we determined there's multiple spirits in the home because Nick and Carissa were there, and I think we've got 5 voices. Steve and Dawn were there and got multiple voices, and they went into the attic, the crawl space. Dawn went into the creek behind the house and got voices there. He got one voice to admit or say that, yeah, this used to be a Native American burial ground, the whole city of Bothell, pretty much, basically. Bad stuff happened here. So, yeah, it's not impossible to think that one out of the 14 or one out of the whoever came here. And I always believe that while some spirits are burning Bibles and throwing stuff to terrorize me and Tina, other spirits are just watching it, not so much being a part of it. It's like people. You and me could be sitting in a restaurant, and all of a sudden somebody at another table just gets up and turns the table upside down. We're not associated with them. We're just in the same vicinity. And some of these spirits are the same way, because some of them are mean, some of them are vindictive, manipulative, and I think those are the ones that are tethered to that land or tethered to that house. The mean ones, because I've not seen anything malevolent outside of the water puddle happen here. I mean, the poking and the prodding, that's still a violation, if you will. That's nothing nice about that. It's not nice to pull people's covers while they're sleeping. It's not, so that happens here. But if it's hard to quantify that, because that still is a violation. That still is a molestation, if you will. But it's not a fire. It's not a fire alarm going off. It's not books burning. It's not a couch being thrown or an armoire being thrown. So I'm kind of, I don't really know how to categorize it, because when I tell people the bad stuff is not happening, which is good, but I'm also telling people, I still get sheets yanked off me at night. And I know by experience these things can change on a dime. I just don't know when. Nobody knows when. Now, granted, I live by myself now. Me and my girlfriend broke up. I do think there's something to be said that these things need 2 or 1 or more people to exercise their most violent activity, because I can find no documented poltergeist case affecting 1 human being.
Now, we're coming close to the end of our session, doing with the interview and so forth. But what if you met somebody else that was going through a similar experience, possibly a poltergeist activity that's going on? What would you suggest to them? What would you kind of let them know how to handle that situation? Because it is a serious situation, or at least very challenging. So I'm very curious your input on possibly some advice on maybe somebody that may be going through that, what they could do.
If somebody's going, the advice I would give, and there's a lot of variables and it's very dynamic, but I boiled it down to what I want to tell people if they're going through a poltergeist-like haunting. If you feel, and this is your gut instinct, the need to just get out soon versus later. Okay? Don't hesitate. Just get out sooner versus later. Had I had children or pets, or I probably would have got out sooner. If you're going to stay, document as much of the phenomena as you can. When I mean document, I mean be very meticulous about your documentation, because that helps the investigator and the researcher, and it helps you. Memory gets foggy over time. Skeptics, I've learned, like to seize upon your inconsistency, and that could just be plain out forgetfulness. Doesn't mean you're lying about your story. It just means so much has happened that you can't remember every detail, and you will get tripped up. But if you have your notes, and when you document the day that it occurred, the time, what the weather was outside, what was the conditions before, during, and after the activity. And when the activity happens again, God forbid, document the space between. Your documents are going to show whether this happened 2 hours, or they're 2 hours apart, 2 days apart, 2 weeks, or 2 years. And the more you document, the more you take careful notes. Nikki and Carissa, it really made their job a lot easier, my documentation, as did Steve and Dawn. Because, like I said, people look for the inconsistency, and they look to try to find if the house occupant is lying or making it up as they go. Because we have a hurdle, and by hurdle I mean the house occupant has a hurdle to cross of being believed. And with me, some of the things that saved me or made me sincere and made others believe me was, this guy has a lot of documentation. I mean, he's got documentation years and years. And when you email a friend and say, hey, I'm emailing my friend because my couch just floated, that's going to save in your email archives. That's documentation. That's evidence. That adds to your credibility. And the third thing that I would give is remain calm. And that's way easier said than done. Trust me, it's easier said than done to remain calm. But try to remain calm. And sometimes me and Tina, we left the home, be it for a weekend or for a night, get a hotel. Activity, it's like opening up all the windows in the home. It can change the energy or relieve the pressure, if you will. But remain calm. It's very nerve-wracking. I mean, you got to understand, this is very rare, this phenomena, to see something catch fire right before your eyes, or to have a shirt catch fire while you're wearing it, or to have your name written on a wall that says die Keith Liinder or die KL. Those are disheartening things. And sometimes me and Tina would overcompensate based on the fear factor, and the spirits eat that up. I mean, they really will crank it up a notch once they know how to push your buttons. But going back to that first advice, if you feel the need to get out for any number of reasons, then get out. There's no way to put it nicer. Just get out. But if you feel a need to stay, then document, and try to remain calm. And when you see yourself going beyond remaining calm, stay at a friend, stay at a hotel, and the activity you will see will dissipate, because they need you. They needed us. They could not do anything in that house without me and Tina being there. We didn't necessarily have to be at the home all the time, because a lot of the stuff happened while we were at work. But we need you to be attached to the home mentally and spiritually to do what they do, and that's what they did. But if you can leave, and if you could leave for a short period of time when you see yourself about to go on edge, then yeah. And research and find true help. All help ain't good help, as Dog can tell you in my experience with a lot of paranormal teams, including Ghostbusters. All help is not good help, and there's more bad help out there than there is good help. And the bad help is fuel for the poltergeist. It really is.
And a lot of the bad help it, you know, and I'm sure you can agree with this. It's just people that are trying to become famous or trying to, you know, trying to make some money out of other people's experiences. I mean, that's for sure.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's the cool factor. It's the wow factor. They're trying to make themselves famous. They know nothing, and I get it. We knew nothing as well, but I'm not an investigator. But they knew nothing about what they were walking into when they came into our house, and they thought they did. They thought they were cavalier, and when they walked in and thought the spirits were going to bow to their will, they got they were awakened by the truth to understand that no, they're not. And the house occupants pay for it. We do. When they leave, when the investigators leave, they take it out on the house occupants. And they did with me and Tina. Some of the worst hell we caught was after the Ghost Adventures episode, because now Tina's upset. I'm upset. Well, guess what? We're upset, and that emotion's in our house now. And the guys are like, yeah, that's why we didn't do anything when Ghost Adventures was here. We wanted you guys to be upset. Now that you're upset, let's throw some furniture around. Let's make you guys blame each other. Tina's blaming me for bringing Zach in the house. I'm blaming her for bringing Zach in the house. So now we're giving each other the cold shoulder, and the Geist is over there in the corner, and he's about to crank it up a notch. And that's exactly what happened.
And just a closing question: have you been able to communicate with the residing people that are there now to see if certain things are happening to them?
I haven't reached out to them, Don, and I want to. I will give you an update that I got from a neighbor who lives close by the house. He emailed me about 10 months ago and said that and we told him, by the way, we gave them the information about the house. But he told me, he sent me an email through Facebook a few months after I moved out that says, well, the people in your house just replaced the door with a blue door. Your door is blue now. And I don't know. I knew that meant something. I just didn't know what. So I Googled, what does a blue door mean? I mean, why blue? And sure enough, the blue door, certain cultures believe a blue door on the home is to ward off evil spirits. It's to keep the evil spirits from coming in the home, and it's to dispel any evil spirits currently inside the home. The reason why I didn't go into detail, the reason why I didn't go back to check up on them, but they have all our contact info, is because I didn't want to give them what me and Tina didn't have when we moved into the house, and nobody told us the fact of, if I go tell them everything that we've experienced, they're going to look over their shoulder, and every bump is going to be a demon. Because keep in mind, that's what happened to us when every bump started happening. You can't avoid it. There's no, once the psyche knows that something lurks here, every bump is a demon, and that's all these spirits need in that house to crank it up a notch. There's been 5 families that lived in this house before me and Tina. 5. Only 2 that we know of had activity. So there's 2, maybe 3 families that had nothing, or they didn't tell anybody. But even there's one family, because the family that had activity, they had it 4 years before me and Tina arrived. The family that came after them had no activity. So there is a lull, and the less you know can maybe keep the activity at bay. What made the activity spike with me and Tina is, number one, we were there 4 years, and some of the ill advice or some of the steps we did to mitigate the home, like, the saging. We were saging, but we were saging incorrectly. We were just saging. We print out a sheet on the internet and thought we were sage masters. Well, I understand now, when you sage, there's a ceremony in that, and if you don't really know what you're saging, you could be making it worse. But just to sage for sage purposes is probably going to make the situation worse versus better. But my learning curve is way different now. But in the book that I'm almost finished, I go after the aspect of, should I knock on their door? I don't want to knock on their door now. But, hey, is everything going on good? Are you guys, in the couches floating? Because then that notion in their brain, and then all of a sudden next week, hey, our couches are floating. and that's, nobody should live through that. Nobody should see that. And I know there's a family. It's a 5-bedroom house, so there's a family living there with kids. And but yeah, we gave the initial report. Of course, their own digging, their own research. I mean, you have to Google Demon House of Seattle and see the information out there and on the internet about the phenomena taking place. But I do believe that house will be active again. I don't know when. I don't know who. I just think it's just buying its time.
And you also you just made an acknowledgement of it as well. You are coming out with a book as well about your experience and everything going on there. And it is towards the end of our show, but I'd like to give this opportunity if you have anything coming up or things you'd like to share, possibly like a website or when your book's going to be available. I do have in the description also, I have a link to your Facebook for the Washington State Poltergeist House, and I also have the YouTube channel on there. So if you guys are interested in checking out the videos Keith was talking about, you can click on the link in the description below. If you don't see it right now, you can just refresh and it'll be right there for you. But go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, so I finished the book, not editing it. I probably will self-publish it, but the book is done, and my goal is to have it out by the end of the year. There's also going to be a documentary of our 4-year ordeal. The UK team are doing a documentary that should be coming out before the end of this year as well. All this information can be found on my Washington State Poltergeist Facebook page. Information about the case, including all the reports and some of the EVPs and some of the videos, one just has to go to demonsinseattle.com. But you're going to find most of the evidence is going to be on YouTube through various channels, because Nikki has her page and there's information there. Carissa, just Google Keith Liinder and you're going to find a wealth of evidence and information. Google Demons in Seattle, the same thing. My YouTube channel, just Google Keith L. L is my last name initial, and you're going to come right into an area of a lot of information from both teams, the U.S. And the UK, and that's pretty much how I would like to have the information, because the evidence is for any researcher and investigator, and I want these avenues to, Steve and Dawn are still combing through the evidence that they found from the 2 weeks that they were here. They left the first visit with over 500 EVPs, countless material, countless video data. I'm still finding new stuff today. Just to let your listeners know, one of the substances made on the wall in the office of the 666, the wall writings that was shown on Ghost Adventures, we just got that analysis back earlier this year, and we found out through analysis that it's charred cow bones, charred bison cow bones, a paint known as bone black. And it's a highly hard to find. Most people even know it exists. I didn't know it even existed, but we gave it to some analysis, some researchers, and some artists, and some art museums. I did, and that was the determination factor that this was bone black mixed with a paint binder that we think either is some sort of oil, like Dippel's oil, or an oily substance to bind it onto the wall. But the consensus now that is cow bone remains. That video and how we came up to that conclusion is on my YouTube channel as well, so anybody can go through there and find that information, because like I said, you have wall writings and now you have animal bones as being the material they use to wall writings. That just blows my mind.
Well, I'd like to thank you very much, Keith, for coming on and telling your story and letting other people kind of know about your experiences that happened in the residence. And if other individuals are curious or would like to try to contact Keith, feel free to check out his Facebook page, his website, and the YouTube channel as well. And go ahead, bud.
Oh, I was gonna say thank you.
Oh, very welcome. Thank you for coming on, and I hope everybody's having a happy Father's Day, and we will catch you guys later on in the week. We have a brand new episode of Loving Whispers and Spirit Box Weekly coming out this Friday, Thursday and Friday, and we have I believe an investigation. We have an investigation the Friday after, so we're going to see what happens with that. But everybody have a beautiful night. Thank you for tuning in, and we will catch you later.